Greetings to you all. I promise this part won't be long. Okay, so for my loyal subscribers and supporters of my stories, those who always watch, listen, like or comment on my videos, if you would like to feature as a character in the next part, then kindly leave your name or YouTube handle below in the comments and I shall include you. There have been a few people in the past stories that have expressed their interest in appearing as characters, which I have taken note of. I do encourage you though to watch or listen to this story so that you can see why there are going to be so many other characters in the next part. Therefore, if you could leave your feedback in the comments, you can see the format that I have on the screen right now, and your options will be from werewolves, vampires, witches, elves or dwarves. Furthermore, these are characters that are on the good side, which means those who wish to be included will help Victor the werewolf begin his trials. Okay, that's all for now. I hope you enjoy the story. It's really cool. What is fear? An unpleasant emotion caused by impending danger. Your brain sets off an alarm anticipating the threat in front of you, causing such emotion to flow throughout your body. One could often feel an upset stomach, a trembling body, rapid heartbeat, perspiration from hot flushes or even chills, and perhaps shortness of breath. But as Mournrog stood in the village of the Harrow with his muscular body, so muscular that one could count the tiny muscle fibers showing through its tightly wrapped skin, then people had understood what fear really was. Maybe it was his sheer size, almost the height of the houses in the village, that caused a daunting level of concern, or was it the fact that behind the Hellhound's eyes was nothing but pain and rage? In front of him stood a newly formed trio, one that has never worked together before. Ragnar the White Wolf, Myra the beautiful and powerful witch of Redwater, and Fulian the vampire cop in his monster form. They stood strong indeed, standing with purpose and vigor. Now they had to prepare for battle against this terrifying fiend, a fiend that was beyond any of them. But who were they fooling? Among the false bravado and fancy poses, they knew Mournrog, the oldest and most skilled Hellhound, was fear incarnate, and the werewolf, witch and vampire trio at this moment were the symptoms of fear. The townspeople from Redwater, now occupying the Harrow, ran for their lives, stumbling and trampling on each other. However, the haste in their strides gradually lessened when they noticed the Hellhound's eyes. Mournrog, in the thousands of years that he had lived for, never, ever harmed a human on earth. When he looked at the townspeople, as frightening as the hound was, and as strange as this may sound, his eyes spoke volumes of calmness and reassurance towards them, saying, "Do not be afraid. No harm will come to you." He then looked at the children screaming and crying in the village and began wagging his tail, which did seem to calm them down. The relationship the hound had with humans was a peculiar one, for Mournrog's story is rather a tragic tale. No person or animal is born with evil. Hatred and prejudice is something that is learned. It's an influence, a widespread bandwagon that if you don't hop onto it, you begin crumbling internally, which in turn makes you doubt your beliefs no matter how true they may be. When Mournrog was a pup, his mischievous behavior wasn't hazardous in any way, not like his younger brothers Mournrags and Mournrix. This, of course, was way before the hound became the soul torturer in hell. Being the curious, playful type, the Hellhound would mess around with portals and walk the earth. Rather than causing havoc and destruction, Mournrog took a liking to humans. Even at that young age, the Hellhound was massive and looked terrifying. Folk would often run in fear and hold their weapons in front of them, waiting to attack the hound. But sticking out his tongue, closing his eyes, wagging his tail, and laying on his back for belly rubs sure did warm the hearts of many. The Hellhound was fascinated by the vibrancy Earth had to offer, since all he was exposed to was the dark, ugly, cold nature of hell. Be it the merchants helping us the smell of bread from small bakeries, folk pushing wooden carts with the freshest, most abundant type of vegetables, or even the little ones playing their own made-up games in the busy walkways of villages and towns, they all made him smile. No one knew where Mournrog came from. No one knew that he was born in hell. And yet the town and village folk genuinely began caring for him. These kind folk bathed him and fed him whenever he visited. Mournrog never knew what normal food tasted like, always devouring whatever filth they could find in hell. Hence, when he got the taste of bread, freshly cooked meat off the bone, pristine and healthy vegetables, it all became a sensory overload. All this goodness packed on earth was hidden from them. The hound felt loved, cared for. He felt at home, as home isn't always a place with walls and a shelter, it's a feeling. Mournrog would push the heaviest of wooden carts and pallets for the village folk as if those very things weighed less than a feather. But the pining in his heart grew, for only if his brothers were here then it would truly feel like home. Once the day was over, Mournrog would then sneak back into hell and patiently wait for the next time that he was able to sneak out and visit Earth once again. Many years later, Zalzar, the hired demon of war, found out about Mournrog's shenanigans. However, he couldn't fight the Hellhound or banish him, as he knew Mournrog was an ally that he couldn't lose. So, Zalzar did what demons do best, deceive and manipulate. Before the Hellhound snuck out again, he would always search for Mournrags and Mournrigs. Why was his brothers never around? Slowly but surely the hound made his way to the portal, always turning back each time to see if anyone spotted him. And then, as he turned his head towards the front, Zalzar was standing in front of him. The Hellhound felt scared, exposed, like a thief being caught in the act. The demon said, "Where do you think you're going?" Mournrog felt immense guilt consuming his chest and gently put his head down, followed by moans and cries. Then the lies and manipulation took place. Zalzar, the higher demon, said, "The humans don't love you. They don't praise you or wait for you to visit them. They hate you. They fear you. Everything they have shown you is out of fear. Your brothers walked the earth as well, and they were shunned, ridiculed, beaten, and these are the same people that you want to see. The humans are formulating a plan to kill you. Now, whether it's by force or through poisoning your food, your death is certain in that place. Those pathetic fools prayed to angels to rid you from their lives. You are a mutt, and you will remain a mutt." Mournrog's eyes had lit up red, and this time never showed a submissive posture, rather dominant, strong, and menacing. Then he growled at the demon, showing his razor-sharp fangs, and Zalzar backed away. "No, Mournrog, easy boy," he said. "This is what the humans say, not I. I have created you, Mournrog. Why would I say such a thing? Don't believe me? Come, let me show you something." The higher demon took Mournrog and showed him all the souls being tortured in hell. Mournrog, being a hound, never understood that all these evil creatures he was seeing screaming for their lives were actually humans. The appearance of souls compared to that of a physical person differ. For example, if you were a good person, your soul would illuminate a warm blue color in a human-like silhouette, and you wouldn't be in hell. Whereas if you were an evil person, your soul would resemble an ugly, disgusting creature, stuff from nightmares. The Hound then became conflicted when he found out these evildoers were actually humans. The Hound thought, why would people murder each other? Why would people commit such heinous crimes on Earth just to be tortured in hell for all of eternity? Was Salazar telling the truth? If so, why did he feel loved by the humans? Did they really despise him? Was whatever he saw on his frequent walks a lie? Some sick facade? A false portrayal of the human race? Mournrog stopped visiting Earth and was appointed 2 jobs. First one was to torture souls either physically or overseeing the procedure, making sure that no evil soul catches a break. The second job was to fight against angels just in case they ever interfered with demons. There were 72 angels, and thanks to Mournrog they are now 43. The more souls that he tortured and the more angels that he killed, his playfulness and innocent nature had soon fell away. A dark veil of malevolence had now covered his eyes. Little did Mournrog know Salazar used those tasks as a distraction, giving him his own dungeon, causing a rift between the brothers while roping them in to carry out the most vile, dirtiest, and gruesome murders known in existence. If Mournrog knew this, he would never have allowed it to happen. The relationship between the Hellhounds was under strain. Mournrags and Mournrigs always saw Mournrog as the older brother that always lectured them, constantly bossing them around, and not forgetting taking over their lives. Yet this was never the case. Mournrog loved his brothers, cared for them deeply, trained them, and gifted them with amazing power and skills to survive. Despite him being a mere hound, he wasn't foolish. All he wanted was his brothers to be safe and only do what they're supposed to do, which was help him oversee the punishment of evildoers in hell. Then and when the time comes, the 3 of them could escape to Earth permanently. Be independent, join the humans, help them, fight for them, save them from the selfish agenda angels had for them, live a life that doesn't resort to them being mere muds. Then, when he traveled to the woods of Redwater, he saw his little brother lying on the ground, jaw broken, eyes opened, lifeless. The face of the middle brother was smashed into a pulp. The last thing Mournrog told him was how he never cared about them, and that's the reason Salazar gave him his own dungeon and throne, waiting for his brothers to die so he could take in all the glory. A tear rolled down Mournrog's eyes, knowing Mournrags and Mournrigs died with resentment towards him. In the puddle of blood where the head of Mournrog supposed to be, lied pieces of the hound's teeth, eyes, and flesh. However, in the midst of trying to find his brother's body parts, he noticed white fur soaked in the puddle. White fur. Mournrog knew exactly who the white fur belonged to. Now, the hound's eyes moved away from the folk in the village and switched between the trio in front of him. First and only target, Ragnar the White Wolf. All the tales told about him would soon be put to the test. Second was the vampire, easy work. The Hellhound then moved his eyes to the witch and frowned. This particular difference was something Ragnar noticed. Why did Mournrog look at them with the intent to kill, yet it wasn't the same for Myra? How strange. And just before the White Wolf could process what was happening, the Hellhound lunged forward, charging towards him head-on and galloping at the speed of light. The White Wolf returned the maneuver, lunging off his feet and pushing forward. Fillion Hunt changed into a wisp of smoke, flanking Mournrog. Myra levitated in the air with glowing purple eyes, while conjuring up a dark light matter orb between her hands. When Ragnar got closer, he knew that he was in the wrong position. The werewolf accepted his fate by forming an X with his forearms to withstand the blow. Mournrog used his head literally and ran the werewolf with so much of force it sent Ragnar flying through the houses in the village. The White Wolf knew Mournrog was strong, but this strong, no one would have imagined. The vampire crept up to the side and landed a barrage of lightning-quick punches all towards the ribs. These were powerful shots, make no mistake, but the reaction that Mournrog gave was colder than a winter's night. The hound never retaliated, not at first. Rather turned his head slowly towards the vampire and looked at him. Fulian's eyes widened with shock and gradually lessened his punches, gently backing up. But Mournrog took a swipe with his massive paw and sharp claws, tumbling and rolling the vampire onto the ground. Myra's projectile orb, big and powerful, reached the hound and hit him square in the face. Mournrog backed up. The fuzzy purple dust made him sneeze. The hound had the same expression as earlier, looking at the witch without the intent to kill, this time however with annoyance, a warning to stay back. Why was the Hellhound not going after Myra? Ragnar the white wolf leaped through the air from miles away, landing on top of Mournrog, mounting him and pummeling the top of his head. Punches, elbows, hammer fist, no fixed pattern. The Hellhound tried shaking off the white wolf, but couldn't anticipate the angle the next attack would come from. While the next moment only lasted for a millisecond, this had cost the werewolf his position. This was something that a former warrior knight should have known from his impressive resume of battle experience. Never take your eyes off your opponent. Ragnar picked up his head and noticed Myra standing from afar, sending projectile orbs one after the other, yet Mournrog did nothing about it. Why was the witch important to the Hellhound? The vampire finally stood up from the massive strike earlier and dusted himself off. And at that moment, the Hellhound jolted his body to the right, making Ragnar lose balance and fall to the ground. The Hellhound used his front legs and stood on Ragnar's chest, putting all of his weight onto the white wolf. The werewolf coughed out blood with impact, but tried grabbing Mournrog's head. The same manner that a fox would dive into the snow, the Hellhound did the same on Ragnar's chest. A 600 kg beast repeatedly jumping and landing on the werewolf, crushing his sternum and ribcage with ease. Mournrog's mouth opened wide, his gnarly sharp fangs inches away from Ragnar's face, ready to take his head off. The vampire ran so fast, it seemed that he literally teleported from point A to B. He used the side of his palm and hit Mournrog in the throat, retreating the hound while making it cough. Ragnar used those few seconds to look at the vampire and nodded his head as thanks. The white wolf barely crawled out. His lungs were punctured, but the werewolf gene had been slowly repairing the damage caused by Mournrog. So maybe Fulian wasn't an insect after all, but he was still holding back. The vampire had an aura of immense power within him. This was something Ragnar noticed when they were in the woods of Redwater. Perhaps his kindness and warm nature was the cause of suppressing it. Myra further used this opportunity to cast a barrier around Mournrog, the same way she enclosed the Hellhounds in the woods of Redwater, lifting the hound up and then slamming him to the ground. The witch was powerful, way too powerful for a 29-year-old. This one tactic or move that she had done confirmed Ragnar's suspicion. Myra saw the werewolf staring at her but couldn't seem to return the gesture. Secrecy and lies behind those mesmerizing purple eyes. Of course, the purple spherical barrier surrounding Mournrog never lasted, nor did it hurt him. This was more of an irritation or annoyance, and yet again never attacked the witch, rather growled at her menacingly as a final warning. Fulian charged at the Hellhound again, but Ragnar, with blood in his mouth, exclaimed, "No, wait!" Mournrog's tactics were sly to say the least, making him seem distracted by something when in reality, he was more focused than before. In the corner of his eye, he saw the vampire running towards him and swung his body around in an instant, going in for a bite. This final move would have been the death of Fulian. Mournrog's jaw and fangs were so strong and sharp that it didn't matter how quick or powerful one was, they would not be able to escape. A wounded Ragnar Leifson used every bit of his speed lunging forward, grabbing the vampire's long coat and pulling him back. But the werewolf had sacrificed a limb. Mournrog latched onto the werewolf's arm and viciously shook its head, ripping the forearm clean off. The white wolf roared in pain, but still managed to land a powerful right hook to the hound, pushing it back further. The witch cast yet another shield, this time to protect, not harm, in front of Ragnar while she ran to the werewolf's aid. The vampire stood in front of them while constantly turning back to check on Ragnar, blood shooting out from his ripped arm, moaning in pain, and Myra trying to stop the bleeding. The werewolf's wounds would heal. Mournrog didn't have poisonous glands, not like Mournrog's, but with Ragnar being immobilized, the chances of the vampire and the witch surviving looked pretty glum. The night had come to an end. The townfolk hiding in their temporary homes looked at the sunrise in the distance, a chilly morning with a gentle breeze. Mournrog needed to wrap this up. For a moment he had forgotten the cardinal rule. Supernatural beings like himself that do not belong on earth would soon fade in their strength the more time they spent. Then in the quiet morning, among the sounds of Ragnar grunting in pain, holding his arm, Myra talking to the white wolf, Fulian preparing to face the Hellhound head-on, there were two more sounds that followed. First sound was a loud exertion of force muffled by a long beard, a large silver axe soaring through the air, spinning vertically and finally impaling the left side of Mournrog's neck. Second was the sound of 3 arrows whistling by like wind. This was so quick that if one blinked they would miss it entirely. The arrows weren't fired at random or in panic, rather with precision targeting the pressure points. Berthold the dwarf, while holding his second axe, emerged from behind the houses in the village. Eleanor the elf then glided down the rooftops. Now, this was what an attack looked like of 100 years of experience working together. The elf and dwarf were a powerful, troublesome duo to deal with. Mournrog moaned in pain, but when he tried to charge at them, he noticed that he was stuck, constantly jolting forward but being pulled back each time. Then, as the hound turned its head behind its body, he saw why he couldn't move. His tail was being held by none other than Victor, the Grey Werewolf. Victor Humbridge looked different. He looked bigger, stronger, and filled with purpose. The confusion, conflict, and weakness that he had seemed to have departed from his body. The dilemma of still thinking that he was a human, an ordinary townsman trying to make a living, had now detached from his soul. This wasn't Victor the Doctor holding Mournrog in place. This was Victor the Werewolf. Then he tightened the grip on Mournrog's tail and swung the Hellhound behind him. Mournrog never fell injuriously, rather landed on all fours but skidded across the ground. The elf and dwarf by the sides of Victor respectively was then joined by the vampire and witch, but Myra's purple magical shield was still protecting Ragnar behind them. Laughable. Mournrog chuckled and then spat out blood onto the ground while snorting his nose. He slammed the side of his neck to the ground, removing the axe and leaving a nasty wound. The hound then used its paw and swiped the arrows impaled to the side of his neck, snapping them off. In the heroes' minds they thought the tides have changed, but for Mournrog this fight had just gotten interesting. Time to show his real power. Alas, the moment was ruined. Next to the Hellhound, a fiery beam shot out, and the ground began crumbling, turning into a sinkhole. Zalzar, the higher demon, emerged from the hole and placed his hand on top of Mournrog's body. Then, as quick as snapping one's fingers, Zalzar and Mournrog disappeared into the sinkhole. All this happened in such a brief moment, but there were so many noticeable things. 1. Mournrog tried fighting off the teleportation process back to Hell. 2. Zalzar caught a glimpse of the heroes standing united. And number 3. The same confused look Mournrog had when he saw Myra was the exact same expression Zelza had when he looked at the witch. Once again, despite being in agonizing pain, the white wolf noticed this unfold before his very eyes. While the allies regrouped, tended to Ragnar's wounds and made acquaintances, Zelza and Mournrog arrived in Hell. The Hellhound was furious with the higher demon, but Zelza was right in doing so. The wounds on Mournrog were gnarly and needed to be treated as soon as possible. While Mournrog stormed his dungeon and shut the door, Zelza held a council. A group of petrifying, spine-chilling monsters and demons sat around a table in a large room. Zelza wrote symbols on the wall which opened up a receiving line. The demon appeared as a hologram, standing in a magnificent, dark, spooky and eerie castle just north of Cascada. The Wizards of Three received the call the same way that we would on Skype or FaceTime. Zelza's call was short and to the point when he said, "Wake him up. I have work for him. He's summoned to the council meeting in 5 minutes." Then the hologram disappeared. The Wizards of Three, old, cunning, and evil yet wise men, walked up the many flights of stairs of the castle. They made their way to the master bedroom and found a pale man lying on the bed with tubes and pipes joining to his body, like a patient in the hospital. The old wizards, Cornwood, Connolly, and Caleb, looked at each other in fear, deciding which one of them had to carry out the death wish task of waking up this mysterious person. How we would normally do rock, paper, scissors, the Wizards of Three decided using magic. They stood in a circle, held out their hand like they were trying to grab something, and 3 respective astral-like monsters were cast within the circle. The first astral monster that died means the wizard casting that projection loses. Cornwood lost and moved towards the bed. He then removed the tubes and pipes from the pale man's body, long siphon-like tubes that led right around the castle all the way to the dungeon below, filled with innocent people being drained of their blood. Cornwood felt his heart pounding against his chest. Sweat dripped from the sides of his forehead, which was constantly dabbed using his long robe. "Sire," he whispered. "Sire, you have been summoned." Connolly and Caleb hid behind the door, peeking through, watching this nerve-wracking moment unfold. "Sire," the mysterious pale man with his eyes still closed grabbed the neck of the wizard. His fingernails were long, pointy, and razor-sharp. Cornwood, while being strangled, still managed to spit out the words, informing the pale man of the council that he was summoned to. The wizards had left the room, perspiration all over their bodies from the dangerous encounter. Gilroy, the higher vampire, had awakened from his deep slumber of more than 50 years. The vampire walked to his old wardrobe, pulled out his long grey coat, similar style to what Fillion wears, donned his pants and a neatly ironed white shirt that had an upturned collar, his black boots, and walked out the room. The Wizards of Three bowed in respect or maybe fear, then opened a portal for him that led straight to hell. The foul and despicable creatures waited for Zelza to begin. Monsters with ugly, sharp teeth, demons with rotting flesh and skeleton-like faces, vile and dirty creatures larger than the white wolf himself, all conversed about the matters at hand. Zelza spoke. "That weasel Arkine has made an awful mess. Now, I don't know whether he knew about the prophecy and still chose to create a werewolf in the woods of Redwater, or was he just a dumbfounded imbecile? Nevertheless, I was hoping that the grey werewolf died before he found allies, but we are running out of time. Ragnar the white wolf has joined him, so has the elf and dwarf. There was also a vampire cop among them with troublesome power. Thankfully, that power is still dormant. It's only a matter of time before the trials commence. We cannot attack them head-on. The white wolf is smart, he knows better. I fear that he will not leave the side of the grey werewolf. If the crones go after the grey werewolf, Ragnar takes them out. It's just too risky. One of the monsters interrupted.
But my lord, what about the Witch of Redwater? Shouldn't she be on our side?
Zalza replied, That's the reason the White Wolf wasn't at his best today. It's only a matter of time before they piece it together. But to answer your question, no, she isn't on our side despite
the next demon had interrupted. Why don't we all just walk the earth and get rid of them before the trials begin?
Zalza shouted at the monster, Silence, you foolish creature! Do you know how difficult it is for the crones to help us roam freely? They are saving their strength to open the largest ever gateway from hell to earth, just so my army can enter all at once. By me saving Mournrog today, I just pushed them back 1 week later.
Then a goblin-like creature that was so short he would have to jump to use the toilet stood on the table confident as ever when he interrupted.
My lord, I have the solution. So a few nights ago I had a dream, yeah? And I fought the White Wolf one-on-one. No weapons, just a fist fight. And the best part was that I won, yeah, exactly. So why not send me down there, eh? I can take care of him.
Everyone began speaking over each other, blurting out nonsensical solutions.
The noise in the dungeon sounded like a fish market. All the demons and monsters were eager to tackle Victor's allies, the vampire, witch, elf, dwarf. But when it came to Ragnar Leifson, except for the goblin, no one spoke. Then the sound of boots knocking on the floor was heard outside the dungeon door. Slow, steady, and confident. The doors opened slowly and Gilroy the Higher Vampire walked in. He said, I will take care of the White Wolf. The monsters in the dungeon gasped while widening their eyes. Gilroy looked around the room and laughed at how weak they all were. Zalza acknowledged him and then responded, You and I have never seen eye to eye, but as per our agreement, only this one time we are working together. Make no mistake, demon. The Higher Vampire interrupted. There's one thing you seem to have forgotten. I do not take orders from the likes of you. Your memory fails you, demon. I've warned you before. If any of you cross my path on earth, I will rip you to shreds. It just so happens that our goals have intertwined. None of the demons in the dungeon moved. The fish market of a council turned into deafening silence. The soft-spoken, mysterious, eerie vampire has a reputation far exceeding the White Wolf. They call him Gilroy, the first ever vampire to walk the earth and the man responsible for turning Fillion Hunt. The silence in the dungeon was surely fitting for what this vampire has done, make the crones and demons look like saints. No one in the council knew what Zalza offered Gilroy. Some things were better left unsaid to weaker demons. The Higher Vampire's job was a tricky one. Once and if the trials begin, no supernatural being living or dead could interfere. Rules. The crones will handle Victor, which saves them the trouble of exhausting their energy trying to get demons on Earth so soon. Ragnar will tackle the crones, then Gilroy will take him out. That was easier said than done when others could get in the way, like the elf, dwarf, witch, or vampire. There was no need for Gilroy to be briefed. The first ever vampire overheard Zalza explain everything to the council before he entered. The demon asked, "What will you do?" The Higher Vampire replied, "I have to separate them. That group is strong even for someone like me. Let's hope Ragnar kills the witch when he finds out who she really is. But we need to remove speed from the equation. In order for them to begin the trials, they need speed. We know those who aren't fast enough in their place never return. You speak of a vampire they have, hence I will begin with him." Zalza asked, "When will you begin?" Gilroy ignored the demon, whistled, and walked away. It was unfortunate indeed. The paths of the higher demon and the vampire had crossed. Zalza hated this man. He was far too powerful and unpredictable. All the murders he has committed, all the innocent people he tortured, Did this vampire really think by changing his name to Gilroy and sleeping for so long will wipe his history from the land? Zalzar was one of the few that remembered his name. His real name, Vlad Tebish, aka Dracula. The dark storm clouds looming over the Harrow burst with rain. The day was silent for a while, the breeze cool and the land somewhat barren from the presence of the Hellhound. None of them celebrated. What was there to celebrate? The fact that they stopped the Hellhound, not defeated, but stopped, or that it took 6 of them to do so. Then a sudden realization crawled on their skin. Mournrog was better than them. Ragnar looked at his arm and noticed the bleeding stopped. The cells were repairing themselves and the tissues were regenerating, slowly but surely. Still, his bones would take longer to heal. No one could hide pain like that. For a warrior, he slipped up and felt disgraced. While the werewolf within could heal the physical wounds, unfortunately, the sting on his ego wouldn't be so easy to overcome. The group stood near the mountaintop conversing with each other. Fulian had finally gotten a chance to speak to Victor after so long, and he was amazed by how much he has changed since they last spoke. Victor was also impressed by the vampire's menacing and terrifying form, while smiling at each other, remembering the fight they had in the woods. The elf and dwarf exchanged pleasantries with the vampire and the witch. Fulian and Myra were starstruck, seeing how absolutely breathtakingly gorgeous the elf was, almost like looking at an angel without wings. Except if the angel had pinpoint precision and unnatural eyesight. They were more impressed by the power and agility the dwarf showed, since his build was stocky, bulky, and short. Berthold noticed Ragnar distracted by his thoughts, the way one would look trying to solve a mystery in their head. Victor and Myra then shared the story of how the Hellhounds went after them in Redwater. The battle then moved into the woods, the people entered the Harrow through Myra's portal, Victor was momentarily knocked out by Mournrog, and before the witch could continue, Ragnar had interrupted.
When the Grey Werewolf was momentarily knocked out, how did you fend off 2 Hellhounds by yourself, witch? That is some remarkable power. Not a single scratch on your body.
The group looked at Ragnar, but Myra kept her head down. The witch nervously and anxiously rubbed her fingers together when she said,
"Oh, that was luck, I guess. Besides, Victor gained consciousness quite quickly. My main priority was the townfolk of Redwater and trying to help the werewolf."
Fulian stepped back and frowned. The vampire skill of knowing when someone lied screamed at him. Myra was indeed lying. Ragnar hurt all over his body, but mustered all the strength that he could with his one arm and grabbed the witch by her neck. The werewolf dangled Myra over the mountain ledge as she squirmed in his grasp.
One more lie, witch, and my fingers just might slip.
Victor and Fulian, confused and angered, dashed forward, but they were stopped, dead in their tracks. Berthold held his axe in front of Victor and said, This is a silver axe, laddie. The elves can give you life, but the dwarves can take it away." Eleanor had already drawn 3 wooden razor-sharp arrows, pointing at the vampire's chest. The elf's flirtatious wink might have given the wrong impression, but upon further inspection, Fulian saw it in her eyes. No hesitation to kill. The dwarf and elf had no idea why Ragnar grabbed the witch, nor did they need to. They knew the white wolf would have a very good explanation for doing so, hence they chose to have his back. That is undying loyalty. Ragnar Leifson said,
"Speak quickly, witch. My arm is giving way."
The white wolf never held Myra in a position to hurt her. His hand was placed rather than choking. The more she moved, the more pain the witch brought upon herself. There was no doubt that witches in this world were powerful, sometimes way too powerful for their own good. Be it spells, portals, healing, persuasion, they were talented, knowledgeable, and fascinating. However, no witch alive can enclose a hellhound and toss him around like a toy. This reminded Ragnar of the time when he was trapped in the same barrier, being tossed around by the crone with ease. This was more than Myra being possibly stronger than Ragnar or Mournrog, since the White Wolf knew that normal magic doesn't work on beings that went to hell and back. Mournrags, Mournrog, and Ragnar himself will not have any trouble facing normal witches with ordinary magic, which is the reason Mournrog sneezed when Myra first attacked him. The Witch of Redwater had dark magic flowing through her veins, and dark magic only comes from. Victor's eyes glowed yellow as he grunted, and Fulian's changed blood red with his fangs showing. The tension and frustration grew. The Witch of Redwater, realizing there was no way this ends well if she keeps silent. Then she had finally revealed the secret. Myra's voice sounded defeated, disgraced, saddened, and embarrassed.
The Hellhounds weren't allowed to attack me, neither are any demons. My grandmother. My grandmother is one of the crones. It's a generational curse. I was supposed to follow in their footsteps, but I swear, I'm not like them. Please believe me.
Fulian's eyes widened with shock. The elf lowered her bow and the dwarf his axe. Victor the werewolf was confused, having not known about the crones yet. The vampire said, "How is that possible? You told me your grandmother died." Ragnar gently placed Myra back onto the ledge. This time there was no insect remark, no vampire insult. This time Ragnar referred to the vampire respectfully, then explained the crones aren't living people. The White Wolf told Myra how the demons downstairs would want him to kill her after the reveal, something that he wouldn't do. If Myra was a crone, then Ragnar would have taken off her head by now, but she was merely a granddaughter. The werewolf knew how a stigma can ruin one's reputation. Furthermore, if the witch did work for the crones, then Victor would have already been dead. Now was the time to strengthen the alliance, not break it. Ragnar just wanted the truth, but not everyone felt the same. Fulian the vampire didn't show the same compassion towards Myra. His stare at the witch was filled with betrayal, disappointment, and rage. While Captain Langley's death was still being investigated, he knew it had to be one of the crones. They were also responsible for the werewolf massacre in Houndsville, the deaths of Holt and Lincoln, and not forgetting wanting his heart for a ritual. Just as Myra raised her hand to justify herself, a flare shot in the distance. Thick red smoke traveled through the sky, and Eleanor jumped on the roof of Ragnar's wooden cabin. The elf landed like a feather, so silent the group never heard her. She squinted her eyes and noticed the flare came from Redwater, miles and miles away. The elf said,
"Strange. The flare is coming from the Redwater police station."
Fulian the vampire cop, with urgency in his expression, changed into a wisp of dark smoke and traveled swiftly without saying goodbye. Victor Humbridge ran to join him, but Ragnar stopped the grey werewolf. "Unfortunately, you cannot leave," he told Victor. "There's no time, the trials need to begin immediately. The allies need to gather as many folk as they can. Werewolves, vampires, witches, wizards, elves, and dwarves. Since Victor's trials can only commence by using the petroglyph situated in the jungle of Belru, a massive jungle located on the outskirts of the Harrow and Houndsville. However, Victor's allies will have to fight tooth and nail, not just to find the stone tablet, but to help him reach it. There's just one teeny tiny problem. No one that entered the jungle has ever returned. The jungle of Belru is home to 2,000 barbarians."